motorhome. It's a good way to work.
Where'd you go in Northern California, my friend?
You know, I went up to kind of north of Shasta, looking
I
at
love that area. I love that area. It's great.
Bernie Falls was beautiful.
I've been there. That's great. That's
yeah,
great.
It's real nice. The whole area,
It's gorgeous.
A lot of prettiness.
It's great. Lots of dope. One of the major marijuana growing areas of the world.
They hid it from me. I didn't notice.
It's good to know why Rob went to a place I've never heard of, other than, I've never heard of Shasta. But I want to welcome.
They also have a very famous Shakespeare festival up there.
Yeah.
On that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to that man, Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's watching and listening on YouTube. We will be reading your comments. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the podcast at a super pace. It's been amazing. We thank you. We are blessed. So thank you humbly all. But of course, the show wouldn't be complete with amazing panelists. Tonight we have on from the Media Action Network, former Fox News maverick. I'm talking about Ken LaCourte, who's fresh back from his RV vacation.
Welcome back, my friend. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
You look refreshed, Ken.
I am.
Welcome back, my friend.
And of course, from 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio. Rob Kendall, who is the future of conservative talk radio, if not a future in the House or the Senate or something even bigger. Sorry,
Here's how important Ben Stein is. I'm on the #1 radio station in a major metropolitan area every day, and my dad is never more excited than when I'm on with Ben Stein.
What's your dad's name?
His name is Mike. He's a huge Ben Stein fan.
Ben, if you could,
Stein is humble. Thank you. God bless you, sir.
Ben, if you could give a shout out to Mike Kendall, that would be pretty cool.
Mike Kendall, God bless you, sir, and thank you very, very much. I am humbled, sir.
And on that note, of course, the show wouldn't be complete without writer, provocateur, lover, saint, sinner, father, grandfather, former shoe salesman, and now doctor, Benjamin Jeremy Stein, America's teacher. We will salute you and we welcome you, sir.
It is my honor, sir.
Okay, let's get right off the bat. I just wanted to get into this really quickly to mask on or mask off. Ben, who had an extremely profound post on Parler today about the dehumanization. First of all, let's get into that, the dehumanization of what masks do to people. Ben, and I'll let you expand on it because it was such a brilliant thing you had sent me in the middle of the night.
Well, you're very, very kind, sir. I think actually you played a very, very large part in creating it. But in human life, a large part of our interaction with our fellow humans is seeing their faces. We learn a lot about them by seeing their faces. That has been true for all eternity. And if their faces are covered up, they might as well be robots. They might as well not be human. It is a very serious thing to rob human beings of their ability to interact with their fellow human beings and even know what is going on with their fellow human beings by basically taking away their faces. This is something, by the way, which our brothers in the Muslim community have learned to do to the dehumanizing effect of women. They cover them up except for their eyes. And I think sometimes their eyes are somewhat covered as well. I'm not positive of that. And that dehumanizes them. There's just nothing there except what is the property of their husbands, or I guess fathers maybe too. And and that dehumanizes women. We're doing that to everyone in America and all over the world. And there should be a pretty damned good reason for doing it. I happen to have an incredibly smart friend named Judah Friedman. And Judah suggested something brilliant to me. I said to him, I'm sick of wearing these effing masks. And I said, but I do understand that I have to have one. Yes, I've had the inoculation. Yes, I had terrible, terrible side effects from the second shot. Terrible, really terrible. And my wife and I are still facing them. Why? So I understand why I have to have them. Judah very, very intelligently came right back with, why not have a laminated card that certifies that you've been inoculated? And you go into a grocery store, go into the shoe store, go into anywhere, and you've got your card, and you don't have to be covered up. What's wrong with that?
Well, which goes to the bigger question, Ken. Remember it was a couple months ago at this point, I think, where you said within 6 months you could see this dying down, and or there being a further. I was sort of kidding about the lamination thing in a sense, because I don't believe you should have to wear it at all, Ben. At this point, just take the damn mask off, and if somebody says to you something, the hell with the consequences. You're Ben Stein. But Ken, on the trajectory we're going, you saw Rand Paul today, him and going back and forth with Fauci. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight with this mask thing, with no scientific data at this point, really, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, look, clearly it's become theater to some extent. And had Donald Trump worn a mask, this wouldn't have happened. Instead, he was, but he wanted to project leadership and not look like he was cowering behind a mask. He resisted that, and that, I mean, the concept that I know what you think about hydroxychloroquine, depending on who you voted for, is a shocking thing in America. So it's clearly politicized and beyond what it should be. Look, I still think we should wear them indoors until this thing is, until we've got at least another month or so. If people want to have that and feel it, I think the anti-guys who go into a store and scream because they aren't wearing masks, I think they're a-holes. But yes, it's clearly, I've got one neighbor, I live on a boat dock, and I've got one neighbor who yells at every worker that she sees going by from 10 feet away. She yells at them for wearing the masks. It's about bending
wearing it or not wearing it.
Excuse me, for not wearing it. So my painter came in, it's like, what the heck was going on with this lady? And I'm like, it's all about just her drama, and now she gets to feel good about screaming at somebody. So there's a lot of psychology going on here besides health and human service.
You see, but Ken, this is where I agree with you and I disagree with you. Let's go back a year when the whole point was, remember, let's shut it down, let's flatten the curve, let's do these few things. None of us thought a year later we would still have this massive mask mandate. And at a certain point, especially after you get vaccinated, if you're still telling people after we've hit a certain point that they've been vaccinated, that they still have to wear a mask, you could understand people sort of at this point saying, where's your science? What are you exactly talking about, and refusing to wear a mask?
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Rob. You go ahead. I wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to touch on what's happened here in Indiana, because in many cases, Republican governors and legislators have been just as harmful as Democrats. In our state, our governor laid out in the spring of 2020 a plan to fully reopen by July 4th, because that was going to be the day of the Brickyard race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And he said, if you do all the stuff, wear the mask, do the social distancing, we'll be fully open by July 4th. We get all the way to July 4th, everybody does the stuff, not going to fully open. Then August comes, Indy 500 gets moved to August. Said, we're not going to have fans in the stands in Indy 500. Media in the state says, okay, Mr. Governor, what standard are you going for to relinquish the mask mandate and open the state up? Now it's changed to 3.5% positivity rate. No rhyme or reason for it. It changed. In the state of Indiana, for the past 4 weeks, we have been well below that 3.5 positivity rate. In his weekly press conference, he comes out this week, and now he's talking about the standard to relinquish the mask mandate and open up the state being when they have enough vaccinations for everybody. It's an ever-moving goalpost, and it never stops, and it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's a big government control thing.
It's a mind control thing. It's right out of Orwell. It is for everyone who's watching this, and for everyone who's listening to it, please go to your local library, if there are libraries anymore, or go onto some website that sells it and get the movie, the second version or of 1984, or the book. The whole point of English socialism, which is the same as what Biden and Pelosi and Schumer have now, is to erase any individuality whatsoever. We don't want that. The whole point of America is that it is a nation of 340 individuals. What the big government Democrats, and I'm sorry to say, indeed many rhinos, are saying is, you're just a lump of clay for us to model as we see fit. That is where dictatorships come from. The Fuhrer. He didn't have people dress individually at all. He had people dress exactly the same, so they would all be individual. Sorry, I beg your pardon, indistinguishable from one another. And that is how states of dictatorship rule. Same with Stalin's Russia. Same with Mao's China. You cannot have individuals and have a dictatorship. We want individuals and we don't want a dictatorship. Great. We had this pandemic. Great. A lot of people fought it bravely by wearing masks and by other ways, stayed home, suffered, were bored, got to learn to hate their wives and children. But now we've passed the point of where we can return. Please, let's go back to being a nation of individuals. Please.
And Ken, and Ben, that was brilliantly said. But Ken, to go to the point of what you're saying, somebody noticed that on MSNBC and the other channel, they've taken down the death count, right? No longer is the death ticker on the screen, and but it's and that should say a lot to the Democrat-run media, that there's no ticker anymore for the death count, because we really don't know the true accurate death count, and we never will know with COVID, since so many people were that had COVID,
had comorbidity. Sir, my dear friend, our producer and boss, I your humble servant, have a background in statistics, not a great background, but more than the great majority of people have. I calculated the number of deaths in 2019, calculated the number of deaths in 2020, calculated the number of deaths from lung cancer, heart disease, and so forth. There's just no way for the death count from COVID to come up to even close to what the government is telling us it is. Why are they doing this? They want to scare us. They want to keep us in masks, which is the same as keeping us in prison in many ways. It is a way of, as a very smart friend of mine out in the suburbs of LA says, it's virtue signaling. It's a terrible, terrible way to deprive people of their humanity and individuality. It's time for it to stop.
Ken McCord. Oh, sorry. I was going to go to Ken. I'll get to you there.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon for going so on.
I'll start. Look, the other thing that as I went through the death counts on state by state, you can't see a pattern of when states close down versus the death rate and infection rates. You just don't see that. You look at California versus Florida. The things that you do see when you look at the infection rates and the death rates were when people went home for Thanksgiving and when people went home for Christmas. I mean, you could clearly see the numbers do this. They spiked up 3 weeks after, or a couple weeks after Thanksgiving, dropped back down, spiked up again for Christmas. You looked at other countries around the globe where they don't celebrate Christmas. You saw just a one pop up again. I think when people were going, look, we saw the southern states have, when it got hot in Arizona, people went indoors. That I think people in close proximity was the 99% transmitter of this disease. And I look with as open and honest of an eye as I could to see, are the states, when they shut down and do these various things, and the numbers just aren't there. You're not getting this from people in restaurants, maybe in close stores or whatnot, where you're close to people and breathing on people is a different thing, but not walking out on outside or anything like that. Certainly within, and I also think that they still have no idea of how much of this was transmitted by touching food, touching people, shaking hands and whatnot. That's something
absolutely no idea at all, Ken. That's a very brilliant point. I see people in restaurants handling a piece of lettuce with a thick glove, sometimes 2 pairs of gloves. And I'm thinking, where did you learn that a piece of lettuce could transmit COVID? I've never heard of such a thing. We know very little about it for a disease which we have allowed to control our lives and erode a great deal of our democracy and our republic. We don't really know that much about it.
You both bring up absolutely exceptional points. You're right. For something we know so little about, we're listening to people who know everything about it. Rob, sorry for interrupting you.
No, it's your show. I'm just here for eye candy. So just let me know. The hypocrisy is a huge part of it. And I want to come back to Indiana. I think Indiana is a fascinating example because the perception is that we're a red state. We're a conservative state. In the state of Indiana, the Republican governor shut the state down, did the mask mandates, restaurants, all the stuff. But yet when the NCAA basketball tournament had the ability to come to the state of Indiana, the governor, Eric Holcomb, because he loves basketball, rolled out the red carpet and invited thousands of people to fly into our state. When just a couple weeks before that, it was dangerous and everybody should stay home for Christmas. And if you go see grandma, there'll be an empty chair where grandma once sat, like Tiny Tim in Dickens' Christmas Carol. It's complete and utter hypocrisy from these politicians. And the problem with that is when it's noticeable and easy to spot hypocrisy, people tune out everything, including the good information and advice.
And may I add, while we're in the process of discussing politicians inviting people in, I believe I see the Democrats inviting people, as many as they can get, although with some hesitation in the last couple of days, to come in from below the southern border and come in. Those people's health care is trivial if it exists at all, but we invite them to come here in large numbers. Why? What's the point of that? I mean, I don't understand the point of it at all. There are no jobs for them here. There's no place for them to live here. Why are we doing this except to jam the gears of people who want to keep the law in place?
There's one word: votes. And on that note,
wait, can I back up for a second, Counselor? Where are those votes? I thought those people couldn't vote. Please don't tell me illegal aliens are allowed to vote.
We're a hot. If you look at the bills they're trying to pass now, Ken LaCourte, you posted a bunch of stuff on this today, or in the past couple of days. There are a bunch of people, including Rick Scott, who's calling for amnesty for all the DACA people. Once you start, we know once something starts, there's no end in sight for who's going to, right? Prisoners, DACA, Ken, all the people coming in now.
Look, I mean, Democrats know that 90% of illegal immigrants here will eventually turn into Democratic voters, right? When's the last time we've shipped back more than 10 people at a time back to another country because they were here illegally? The only guy who had the gonads to even say it publicly was Donald Trump. I mean, and to be honest, it was the one thing that out of every issue that he talked about, that was probably the one that helped propel Donald Trump into the presidency more than any other one. Well, he was illegal immigration. He came down on that escalator and announced for presidency at 2% in the polls. He had just read Ann Coulter's book, Adios America. I know that he had read that within the past month. And that's where he came out and he gave the famous, on his announcement for presidency, he gave the famous, a lot of them are murderers and rapists. And of course, then the press said, he said every Mexican. And both parties had sold out America. Democrats see Democratic votes coming down the thing because they know that eventually everybody will become citizens. Republicans, you've got some big ones that just want cheap labor, but most of them are just so afraid of being called a racist that nobody could say anything against illegal immigration. And Donald Trump came and bucked both political parties on the minute that he announced for presidency. And of course, the press freaked out, as they always freaked out every time he'd go 5% over the line and say something, that didn't go to their orthodoxy. And that was the beginning of the ascendancy of Donald Trump figuring out how to play the press by going a little overboard, having them attack him, and everybody's talking about Donald Trump. And it was that one issue. I don't think without Ann Coulter's book, I'm not sure Donald Trump would have been elected. I'll go
with great respect to Ann, whom I've been close friends with for many years and whom I respect very, very much. I think there was a story that we all should have read. If we haven't read it, we can maybe retrieve it on our computers. In yesterday's Wall Street Journal, about how, amazingly enough, the Republicans are getting some of those Hispanic votes of people who come in, and Americans of Hispanic origin and descent are not that happy about unlimited streams of illegal immigrants coming to town, and some of them, in very surprisingly large numbers, are turning to the GOP.
But Ben, if you go by mathematics, right? So if you take 100 people in, even though you might gain 35, you're still you're still down 65 in that count. But if you just tuned in, I want to welcome everybody that's listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to remind everybody to download our podcast on Apple or wherever you can download your podcast, and to get our newsletter, benstein.substack.com. We want to thank you all for all your contributions in the chat. And of course, Ken LaCourte from Media Action Network. And I forgot to say in one sentence, what does Media Action Network do, Ken LaCourte?
If you hate the liberal media and want to kick them back, it's a good place to hang out.
It's mission statement in one sentence. That's how you know he's real. And of course, Rob Kendall from 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio. And here's a question. I want to pose this for everybody. And it's something I have a very hard time understanding. Donald Trump, we all know, got elected without being apologetic. He got elected by being brash. He got elected by never backing down. Republicans, for the most part, never followed suit or never realized that you could actually fight back against the media. Now, you had Rand Paul today, the only Republican senator pretty much challenging Dr. Doom, Dr. Fauci, about the vaccine after you get the vaccine and the mask. Where are the other 49 Republican senators who there's zero scientific data to support wearing a mask after you get the vaccine, or if you've had COVID to get the vaccine, and if you've had COVID to not wear a mask? Where are the 49 senators, Ben? I mean, I in my wildest dreams, and to everybody listening, I've known Ben for a long time. 4 years ago, I never thought I'd hear Ben use the word rhino. Okay. And Ben, where are they?
They're hiding, and they are hoping and praying that somehow a miracle worker like Donald Trump will emerge to lead them to victory without their having to go out on a limb in the midterms and then again in the presidentials. But they are very unwilling to go out and fight for themselves. It's been, a long time since we have had brave Republicans in Congress. And I'm going to go back a lot earlier than most of you gentlemen remember. There was a senator from Wisconsin named Joe McCarthy. He went after communists in government. All the liberals and the Democrats and the media, especially the Washington Post, said, oh, this guy is a fascist. He's a Nazi. There are no communists in government. What nonsense. And he's just a bully and a thug. And he's just making it all up. It turned out he wasn't making it up. It turned out when the Venona decrypts were publicized after the fall of the Soviet Union, there were a lot of communists in the U.S. government. And he wasn't completely wrong. By that time, he was dead, died of alcoholism and shame and unhappiness and being tortured by the media. But he stood up, and wherever there were other Republicans back him, there were definitely some. How many of us have flown into LA, into Vegas airport? It's called McCarran Airport, named after Senator McCarran, one of McCarthy's best friends. But in general, even the Republicans did not back him up, and he got stabbed in the back, and he was making some very, very good points. True, he was not totally in his right mind, but he was making some very, very good points. Those days are gone. When the Republicans stand up, they look into the camera and they see nothing but hostility on the part of the media. They think, why should we challenge the media? The media is all powerful. Why challenge them?
So Ken, you've been in the media business for a long time. You've seen people come, you've seen people go, and whatever, through it all. If you were giving a media lesson to Republicans, what, other than Rand Paul and a handful maybe of other ones, what would be your media message to these people?
Well, look, Donald Trump really did pave the way and show how it can be done now. Look, the media has gotten crazier. It's gotten much more. It went from kind of leaning liberal to liberal activists. You're now literally, I mean, when Bannon walked into the White House and looked at the press corps and said the enemy, he wasn't joking. They are now the official enemy of Republicans. And look,
they have been for quite a while, Ken.
Yeah, but they've in the past 5
they hit
years,
it better.
They've gone from being biased to being absolutely activists, in my opinion. And Trump really showed the way that you could punch back. And again, His strategy is difficult to replicate because he also came in with just 100% name ID. He came in with a lot of extra things, but it's possible. And look, we're seeing Senator Cruz. He's starting to figure this stuff out.
He's great.
A couple of them are starting to say, you can punch back. Again, Trump's strategy was go 15% overboard. If it's 2 + 2, say 2 + 2 = 5. Your group will be okay with you. Your people will say, it's a little exaggeration. The media will stand up and say, this guy said 2 + 2 = 7. Has he lost his mind? And he's orange and he's mean. And all they did was talk about Donald Trump, who tweaked them in a perfect way that his base and his supporters are like, he's just exaggerating. I mean, literally, it came to such fruition when I saw him. He said, remember when they brought in a bunch of fast food for a basketball team that had won some basketball.
Oh God, this was horrible.
And he said we had 500 hamburgers there. They'd stacked to a mile high. Blah 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 blah. The Washington Post literally fact checked that and found out that there was only 238 hamburgers. And then they measured the top to the bottom of a hamburger to see how many hamburgers it would take to stack a mile. And I thought, that's perfect. It's beautiful because they spent 4 days talking about what Donald Trump wanted them to be talking about, which was 1, him, and 2, the fact that he did something that was pretty cool. He wrote a check and bought these guys hamburgers, and the guys loved it more than they loved any kind of state dinner there. So he did that daily, weekly. He would go out there and spin things, and again, I would tell them, and I would say, be a little loose with the truth. Go overboard. Go ahead and have some puffery, have some exaggeration in there. Let the media attack you, and as long as they're attacking you on the basis, when the media was attacking him, saying this one candidate doesn't like illegal immigration, and he was the only guy in America who was standing up and doing that, that gave him 20% in the polls right then. And
I may say so. I think respectfully, the hamburger story is a great super story, really, really, really well chosen. But the amazing part to me was that the media then said it's a racist gesture. He's bringing in hamburgers to them because they're black and they don't know how to eat anything but McDonald's hamburgers. What nonsense! I mean, and yet the media did it, and I think that intimidates people who are less ballsy than Donald Trump. And there are very few people in Congress who have the kind of gonads, and to use your phrase, that Donald Trump has. And let me go back a little farther to something that we have to all worry about and pray over. Yes, Donald Trump had 100% name recognition because he had a very successful show. We've got, where are we going to find a Republican who has 100% name recognition because he has a fabulous, very successful show?
It's harder. Well, we made one mistake in the state of California that I hope we don't make again in this recall election, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger. But Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
So when I interviewed Trump when he was running,
your good friend,
my good friend, he told me I was terrific. I've made a whole career out of one line from Donald Trump. You're terrific. So look, my interview with him was, I mean, it was fun. It was, I'm a fan, right? I was a voter, a fan. They picked me in large part because they knew how much I love Trump. It was on the eve of when he won the Republican nomination, which he clinched here in Indiana. But the interesting thing was, after the interview, you're supposed to leave. And they were focused on the next guy that was coming in. I think it was a guy from Daily Mail. And people forgot I was there. So I'm like, I'm not leaving. I want to see this dude in action in a real interview, somebody who's trying to get him. And the level of supreme confidence that guy had in everything he said, even if it was complete bullcrap, the level of confidence that he oozed, coupled with that he gives zero cares what anyone thinks of him. That is why he was so successful. And we need more people in government who, one, have confidence in their beliefs, in confidence in limited government and America First policies, and 2, have zero cares what anyone thinks of them. Too many of these Republicans want to be liked.
Well, everybody wants to be liked, but we've got to find somebody, or several people, who have that kind of charisma. I mean, Donald Trump was hated by many, 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 many people. But he was charismatic. I personally, I know some people on this panel will not agree with me about this, but I like Mitch McConnell very, very much. I think he's doing a good job.
Are you friends with him?
I've never met him actually, so there you are. Anyway, and I the only Republican senator I know at all well is my son's senator from South Carolina, Mr. Graham, and I like him very, very much. But I know not everyone on the panel does, but I like him very, very much. But anyway, I would like to see some Republicans with charisma, and I think that they can develop charisma, and people can come from absolutely nowhere and develop charisma. I'd like to see somebody do that. And I think you gentlemen are all right. He's got to latch on to one super popular issue. I will give you, with respect, an example. The other day, a friend of mine interviewed me for Twitter about my reaction to the booster shot, to the COVID booster. Both my wifey and I got quite sick from it. And also so did a gentleman who works for us. He got it the next day. He got quite sick too. And really sick. And that went out online and got an astounding number of responses. Why? Because the issue was already there. So let's think, what issues are already there that we can latch onto? Horrible crime, the total catastrophe of American schools. My sister, whom I love beyond words, I just can't describe how much I love her, is a big time Democrat in New York. Even she says she's just discouraged as hell about public education. Thank you, Democrats. Thank you, public school teachers union. Let's latch onto that. Our kids are not being taught, and we're paying a fortune, and they're learning nothing. Let's latch onto that.
No, you raise great points. Everybody's here is you actually, that's an incredible point. But the question again goes to, if you know you're not going to be liked, you have to be okay with that. And
I agree. And with all due respect, I've been out here a long time, and lots of people out here have been very mad at me from day one for being a Nixon lover, not apologist, lover, and Republican free enterprise lover from day one. My wifey and I have learned to go through it together. I have close, dear friends. We go through it all together, and we get through it.
Ken, what are your thoughts on that? Because you're not going to be liked. Why can't these people accept that and be okay with it?
Well, you have to be liked by at least 50% of the population, or you don't win an election. Right. So even Donald Trump needed to be liked enough to win an election, or two or three. But I tell you, you talked about his overwhelming confidence, Rob. There is the Friars Club roast of Donald Trump. They did that. I want to say that was in I
think it was 2012.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. If you want to watch something, a great study in him as a character, first of all, it's hilarious. A lot of below the belt, they were acting like he wanted to date his daughter and all sorts of stuff. And the way that they routinely mocked him, everyone, for thinking that he could ever be president. And he just kept bouncing it off. And then at the end, he gave a very Comedy Central roast, he gave a true political speech about how he was going to make America better when he ran for president. It was like an odd thing, because it was like this comedy show. And the last 2 minutes, when the guy's supposed to come up and say, "Yeah, and screw all you guys," he gave a real political speech. And I thought, this guy's been called an idiot and a fool by every important person, or at least a well-known person and celebrity, and all of these people for years and years, and he still pushed through that. I mean, the amount of self-confidence that he had to not just say, "All right, I was just lying about it," is beyond comprehension to me.
To piggyback on that,
perfectly said.
Because perfectly said.
I could see why you're the #1 talk show host in Indiana.
It's fascinating because he's a real dude, and that's so rare in politics. And when I got done interviewing him, you're supposed to it's like a turnstile when you interviewed him. They did 5 interviews that day, and you got 15 minutes and then it's on to the next person. And they make it very clear, if you're not in 15 minutes, we will physically carry you out while you're conducting the interview. So I get done right on the 15 minutes. And he wants to keep talking. Like, we're done. I'm done with the interview. And he just keeps talking. And the lady that's like the person in charge of the interviews is like giving me the signal, like, you got to go. And I said, I'm not leaving if he wants to keep talking.
You're like, carry me out.
Yeah, it's like, and no joke, I don't know, 10, maybe 15 minutes. We didn't talk about politics. We like sat there and talked about life. He asked me, what do I want to do? I told him about being in politics, getting back in radio. And he was talking about, you got to follow your dream, do what you love. And I told him at one point, I said, if people saw this side of you, they would have a completely different opinion of you. And I think maybe one of the great tragedies of the Trump presidency is so few people got to see that, because he was always such a guarded person in terms of the Trump persona, because he really was a cool, neat guy at his core.
I think there's a tremendous amount to that. I think there's a reason that television shows where they interview celebrities and celebrities say things like, what really scares me is waking up in the middle of the night and having diarrhea. So obviously that's not what they say, but something like that. It's where they reveal the human side of themselves. That is what people want to see. And I would like to see a Republican candidate who is not afraid to show his real self, and is, even if his real self is weak, and even if his real self is not always the most appealing or heroic. There's a very serious problem with many Republicans and Democrats. They don't want to tell the truth about themselves. Tell the truth to people. If they're going to like you, they'll like you. If they're not going to like you, they're not going to like you, no matter what you pretend you are.
The word that you're looking for is authentic.
Authentic, very good.
Authentic.
Very good.
Donald Trump was authentic. He spoke in a different way than you ever heard politicians do it. And even when he was kind of being his New York overselling of something, I felt that I knew who Donald Trump was a lot better than I ever knew who Hillary Clinton was, because he would go out and blurt whatever he was thinking, and he would say things sometimes right, sometimes wrong. He was engaging, he was freewheeling. Somebody in the comments here talked about at his rallies. He's just, he's as funny as a comedian and as entertaining as any entertainer. But you compared that to a Hillary Clinton who's on the opposite, who you knew. He might have mixed up some facts, but she would lie, the big lie. Out there, women are making 73% as much as men. And you knew that every single thing she said was pushed through focus groups and through policy papers and through consultants sitting around and saying, here's the answer to this, here's the answer to that. When they ask you about NASA, say that you cried as a young girl because you couldn't get in, even though NASA didn't exist at the time. So he, even for people who I think weren't necessarily leaning towards liking him, it was just like, I know what I'm getting with this guy. Whereas with most other politicians, they're so afraid of ever saying the word fuck or doing anything.
What?
Fuck. I don't want to get you demonetized on YouTube. But I mean, they're so afraid of saying that thing that screws up and people are yelling at them and pointing fingers at them that they give you a waxen version of themselves.
But I'd like to go, and I agree with every syllable you say, but I would like to go back to this issue, and I think, and I hope and believe that the Republican Party is now combing the country, finding out what is on people's minds. I mean, are people furiously angry that we're taking in all these illegal aliens with no place to put them and putting them in cages when the Democrats made such an issue of supposedly putting them in cages, which we weren't doing in the first place? Are people furiously angry that we're defunding the police when in fact the crime is skyrocketing in many cities in this country? Are people furiously angry that they're spending $19.5 trillion that we don't have, that our grandchildren are going to have to sit through bankruptcy of the United States of America because of? What are they angry about?
I would say, Ben, you raise a great point, and I would say two things right now. Biden lied obviously about everything, but that everybody's tax dollars are going to go up is something people will be absolutely furious about. And I think the constant stretching of the face masks and seeing people like John Kerry on American Airlines not wearing a mask, I think most people are sick and tired of the goalposts being stretched. Because at this point, and I really want to get into this a little bit more, you know, every year we get a flu shot. I get a flu shot every year and they collect last year's 20 strands, right, of different flus, and they do whatever they do. They collect all the popular strands and they give you an inoculation.
Why do you get a flu shot? Why do you do that?
You know why? Because
he's a sheep.
Because I'm a sheep. I've had a terrible case. I've had a few terrible cases of the flu, and I figure err on the side of caution and get a flu shot. I've had the shingles, you know, and it was one of the worst pains I've ever had in my life. So I suggest everybody get a shingles vaccine. But what I was going to say is, we know different strands of COVID are coming. We know it. I mean, it's a virus, just like, you know, a lot of other viruses. So at what point we still don't have kids in school, Ken? We have deprived children of over a year of education. Not that it would be a great education, but at least being amongst their fellow friends for over a year. I mean, when will this insanity end? And I think, Ben, that is a big talking point, because parents cannot stay home with their kids much longer.
Well, I think, but let's back up just a few phrases and say, when will this insanity end? When will the insanity of bringing unlimited illegal aliens into America end? When will the insanity of demolishing education already tottering in this country end? When will the insanity of telling Americans that their security and safety in their homes and on their sidewalks and in their cars is less important than catering to certain ethnic groups' votes? When will that insanity end? And I keep thinking to myself of the great slogan, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And if I may respectfully and humbly say this, I was the one who told that slogan to Mr. Reagan, and it was a good slogan. And I don't think I could come up with one as good now. I'm older, but I think, when will this insanity end or stop the insanity is an awfully good place to begin.
Wait. We owe that to you?
Well, I think Mr. Reagan said I was the first one who said it to him.
God bless you,
counts.
Mr. Stein.
It was my pleasure. Then he asked me if I wanted to be a speechwriter for his campaign, and I said, well, we've always been Bush people in my family, and that was a mistake.
You should have been in Bartlett's, by the way. That's an amazing story. And by the way, we're not telling anybody, choose whether to get the vaccine or not on your own. These are all your own personal decisions. But again, when it comes to this mask thing, we're going to come to the point where I really fear. Remember, in Washington, D.C., how many troops are still there? How many National Guard troops are still there? What is it?
30,000.
20 to 30,000. It's still fenced around in barbed wire. What the hell is going on in our nation's capital? What are they scared of? And I got to be honest.
Now there's brilliance, because that image of the barbed wire, the policemen the troops with bayonets, the fencing around the nation's capital or the Supreme Court, and saying, stop the insanity. That's an extremely good place to start for the midterm elections.
Is part of the it is part of the problem is that the Republicans are completely untrustworthy, though. Look at what came out in Georgia this week. That Secretary of State had the phone call with Trump recorded where they're alleging he said, find the votes no matter what. That's not what he said at all. And that Secretary of State, who was more interested in seeing himself on CNN and being Billy Badass and standing up to Trump, they could have released that call from the beginning and would have saved a lot of drama and a lot of grief in this country. The same stuff that happened in Pennsylvania. They didn't stand up for what the Republicans didn't stand up for what was right. Same thing in Michigan. People don't believe that the Republican Party cares about them. They believe that they care about the Republican Party. And I think that's a huge trust gap that the Republicans are going to have to overcome if they're going to win Trump voters back.
Ken, I'm noticing you're looking very thoughtful, please.
Oh, that was a mistake. No, yeah, I mean, shock of shock. Politicians who've been in the system care more about politicians. And even the guy, look, I like Republicans. I hate them all. I just hate Democrats a lot more than I hate Republicans. And I think that Trump was a third party candidate in a sense. I mean, I remember 4 years ago when he was elected, I'm like, look, I kind of feel like getting a hand grenade and lobbing it into Congress and into Capitol Hill. And for me, supporting him early on was he's the equivalent of doing that. When he went in, I'm like, I want him to win this election. I think there's a decent chance he'll get impeached because he doesn't play the game. I was right on both of those. But he was somebody who, and that's why there's such a huge, strong support of him by people who support Donald Trump a lot more than they support the Republican Party, because he was the first one who talked to them. He was the first one who was honest with them. He was the first one who called a spade so many times. And they're going to have to figure out how to patch that coalition back together if he's not the candidate in 3 years.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Ben, go ahead. Sorry.
It's March 18th, 2021. This country is falling apart in front of our eyes. Yes, the stock market is good and I'm happy. I'm in the stock market. I'm happy it's going up. But the inflation is coming in a big way. It cannot be avoided at this point unless there's some kind of miracle like the evacuation of Dunkirk. We see the crime rate is insane in the big cities of America. We see the total collapse of civility in many of the large cities in the northwestern U.S., my favorite part of the country. Why can't we start our campaign right now?
Because can I give you, Ben, I want to give you an example of why people dislike a few of the people you like, which are Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, because they're the most senior senators, and the message isn't coming from them. The message from the senior senators, remember Graham's moment with Kavanaugh? Why isn't Graham having 1 million of those moments? Why isn't Mitch McConnell having 1 million of those moments? Remember, Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell come from the same state. Why is it Rand Paul that's leading the pack? Why is it not the leader of the pack that's leading the way? And why is it that Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and Rubio don't get that what Ken just said, that the Trump base is now the Republican Party? How is it lost on them that the party of Bush, of all these different Republicans, is not the Republican Party anymore? And they just can't. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
There's a hymn, a Christian hymn. It's a great Christian hymn. Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And I think let's have it begin with us, that to get the message to the Republicans that the ideas of Donald Trump, the followers of Donald Trump, that's the future of the America that is the America of the Constitution and of the framers. Let's start immediately with us. Stop the insanity. What is going on when we are purposely defunding our police, purposely killing our school system, purposely letting in people who are going to spread disease and violence? What is going on? And we haven't even seen what's going to happen with the defense budget. I mean, we're facing two very, very well-armed foes, Russia and China. What I haven't even seen what the defense budget is going to do. It's terrifying. And meanwhile, another piece of insanity. Why are we picking a fight with Putin? Yes, it's too bad that the people in the Kremlin occasionally kill their opponents. What else is new? And let's say, why are we starting a fight about it? What good is it going to do us?
Ken, did you see the story, to go to Ben's point, that there was a memo put out by the Republican Party, by certain people, that they will not be supporting big businesses, that they're going to be supporting the workers, that they're going to become, which I think is a very good, I don't know if you saw that story. I saw it somewhere, either on Breitbart or Fox News, but there was a memo put out.
Look, I before I got into news, I was into politics for a number of years. I worked on a large number of campaigns, including Mitch McConnell's back in the day. And
why'd you do that?
Because do you remember D. Huddleston? Because that's who he was working against. So now this was before you were born, young man. But hey, look, Mitch McConnell was the first Republican to win a statewide office in Kentucky in decades and decades, like since Reconstruction. It was crazy. I mean, he was a groundbreaker there. But, you know, look, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, those internal leaders, none of that means anything. Those people aren't running the country. They're not running the party. They write memos to themselves. I've run for office before, and the only thing that the state party in California was good for was asking for money. They literally did nothing for me. Some state parties are stronger than others because they gather petitions and whatnot. It's going to be about the individuals who rise to the top of that, and there's no behind the scenes party leaders who can stop them from doing that if they're good. And so, you know, we'll have to put our but as much as I get into all of this, I'm still a huge believer that we need to not just pay attention to that. We need to pay attention to the upstream, because, you know, Ben talked about the flood of illegals coming up across the border. Guess what? Most Americans haven't heard that. Not the ones who watch ABC, NBC, CBS News every night, not the ones who watch CNN and MSNBC. Okay, I've described 60% of the country right there. I mean, a lot of these things. I mean, the networks haven't talked about the recent violence in Seattle. I mean, as long as the media and our education and so many of the upstream entertainment, education, media, as long as they spin this around, I mean, the reality, so much, that's the fight that we have to fight, because we will always be fighting an uphill battle, strong headwinds, as long as every media outlet spins everything we say and turns us into a-holes. I mean, you know, we had people openly weeping at the cages for kids under Trump. Now there are more, and you can't find that mentioned outside of anywhere except a small subset of the American media. So I think that, yeah, we could talk about is it Cruz and where are the Republicans? You know, the best thing I think that every conservative can do is do their best to help balance some of those things. And again, that's education. We need to retake the education establishment. There's no reason why every kid has to be a commie coming out of college these days, except if you went to Hillsdale. You know, the news media, churches should be telling people, get into the news media and be a reporter. Yes, I know we hate them, but if we abdicate that, just like we abdicated 95% of Hollywood, it's like, well, if you're in Hollywood, you must be a liberal, and good conservatives don't go into that field. We need to take back those fields, because they're upstream from our culture. And that's what creates the conversations that we're having. And they're always against us. Trump was one of those guys who could burst through. There were times Fox News could burst through. Occasionally you see that, not often.
But I would like to tell you, it's a very easy thing to say, come to Hollywood and burst through. Not so easy to do. And I will tell you that the amount of humiliation that is heaped upon you when you try to do that is quite considerable. And,
I believe you, but it's why things like Friends of Abe were important. It's why that Gary Sinise and Andrew Breitbart had going to try to get a support group there. It's fighting back on a number of levels. None of those were easy things that I said. You know, taking back the education establishment is not a 2-year job, but it's a 20-year job. But it should be on our radar and on our to-do list.
Okay, I say, I will tell you with great respect, I, your humble servant, this old fat man you see in front of you, used to teach at UC Santa Cruz, the most beautiful campus you ever saw in your life.
You always leave out the best part of this story, which is you taught there when the co-ed killer, Big Ed Kemper, was murdering co-eds and then murdering his mother.
Mad, yeah.
And you knew him. And you knew his mother.
I wasn't. We weren't friends.
Well, you met him. That's knowing. Okay, in LA, meeting is knowing. You were good friends.
Who is more famous in society, Ben Stein or Big Ed?
Yeah, exactly. But my point is, there were 1,500 votes cast on campus in the '72 election. My girlfriend Pat Kane, whom I haven't seen in like 40 some years, and a guy who's a Vietnam veteran, and I were the only pro-Nixon votes. Every other vote was for the Democrat. I forgot his name. I think it might have been McGovern. And that's how hard it is to get into the education establishment. It's very, very stacked against us. I agree. We have to keep trying, but it's very stacked against us.
But you know what? 50% of the people who are paying $50,000 a year to send their kids to college are conservatives.
Really?
Nope. Parents is what I'm saying. Nobody's gone after them that way. I mean, we got to fight this like the way that Democrats have fought. They fought and they took over institutions in America, and we need to take some of them back. I'm concentrating on media. Look, and it's everything from telling kids to how to sneak in the back door to get jobs without letting people know they're conservatives working for CNN. It's you see guys like I love the who's the Project Veritas of getting cameras in there and loading them. I mean that times 100 is what we need to start tearing down those on the left and rebuilding it on the right.
You bring up a great point, because one of the most underreported stories of the past a while is the fact that the University of Texas alumni threatened to stop giving money. And that means a lot at the University of Texas if they got rid of of their song, because it was supposedly a racist song. And the University of Texas actually put a panel of 24 people to investigate, 24 people of objective investigators to come back and say, it's okay to still play the song, because money spoke at that point, and the University of Texas. So if alumni in these schools, if these parents that Ken are speaking about, and we're obviously not talking about Yale because they have enough, or Princeton, because their endowments are never ending. But we're talking about schools that actually really need that alumni money. Maybe then, Rob, in Indiana, somebody asked Rob you a question, two questions, one for Ben, have you ever met Mr. T? But why have you ever interviewed Bob Knight? And the same thing I would imagine would happen in Indiana University. Rob.
So Bob Knight was fired 21 years ago. He coached his final basketball game at IU 21 years ago yesterday. So I was but a wee lad when Bob Knight hit the road down to Lubbock, Texas. I did, however, see Bob Knight at Southport High School campaign with Donald Trump for Mike Braun in his U.S. Senate race in 2018. So that was great. It is this is a fascinating time in America, because for the first time, and Ben, you can speak to this obviously more than anyone, but for the first time in my life, people are afraid to say what they think. Like it's
very much so.
It's not being in the minority. It's people are actually afraid.
Oh, absolutely. And people are afraid even to talk to me on my car phone, that they're being listened into. That is a really scary situation. And as I've said before, I am privileged, at least for the next few days, to live in an extremely nice neighborhood where we have our own police force, Beverly Hills Police Department. I am scared when I see a police car with the lights on that they're coming to arrest me for saying something pro-Trump. I mean, that's crazy. Yes, it's crazy. I agree, it's crazy. I'm crazy. But that thought is all around.
Can I tell you something? It's not crazy. It's a hop, skip, and a jump. It is absolutely not crazy. We have let 15%, 10 to 15% of our country dictate to the rest of us, and we allowed it to happen. We allowed the media to get where they are. We allowed these Twitter things to get to where they are. We allowed Facebook and Google and every single one of these companies to get to where they are. And we have as much to blame for allowing this to happen. And but I wanted to ask you a question, Ben. Have you ever met Mr. T? Somebody asked.
I'm sorry.
Mr. T, remember he had the mohawk?
Of course, I remember him very well. I met him a couple of times. I think my recollection is that I met him when he was doing something over at Metro Media Square when that was still being used as a stage before they tore it down and used it for something else. Or I might have met him at another studio, but I definitely met him. I remember saying hands with him, and he was very friendly, shaking hands. He was very friendly.
And as we're closing out on time, I want to ask everybody a question. Ken, since you brought up the time frame, what's your time frame on a mask?
On a what?
On a mask.
A mask.
Oh, I do think we're coming out of this pretty quickly. You're looking at the numbers that are dropping. You're looking at the people who've had it, who've got their own antibodies. Look, clearly the smartest thing was covering up older people and people who are in nursing homes. I mean, those still should be locked down until they're all vaccinated and that, because Look, in my county, 77% of the people who died were in a group home or
Wow.
a place like that. The Hispanic thing is also something that nobody was talking about. In my county, Marin County, 16% Hispanic, 77% of the positive cases were from Hispanics. Don't know why, but that was a
Because it's racist.
Yes, of course it is. It was a hate crime, what I just said, and it's true. And Ben, I do disagree with what you said. You said you were old and fat, and you are not fat. You are prosperous looking, and you are just fine.
You're very kind.
But you didn't answer my question, Ken.
Oh, I don't know. Whenever people stop, look. Whenever the polls say that people are sick of masks, I mean, you saw the Democrats turn on a dime about 2 months ago when all of a sudden the Democrats were saying you got to reopen the schools. I got the Democratic mayor of San Francisco suing the school board to open up the schools. We got Gavin Newsom. Ignore that recall over there. Open up the schools. You had so look, politicians. Maybe it's all one grand scheme to turn us all into Muslims, so I can't see those girls behind the mask. But I find that politicians are usually looking at their polls and listening to the amount of people bitching at them when they call in. And look, I had one of my best friends was a city manager of a decently sized city in Florida. It was a beach city. And I said, the calls that you're getting in, are they for people? This was earlier on in it. Are they getting for people to close down more or to open up more? What's the ratio? He said it was about 6 to 1. You're killing people. Close things down. It wasn't our side. It was the other side. Yeah, because the people who bitch about stuff like that and worry about stuff like that call up their mayor's office. And he was like, look, they made him close the beaches, like anybody's getting COVID on a beach, right? With the wind and all of that. It's ridiculous. But the politicians got those calls. They tallied that up, and the scaredy cat whiners were the ones that ruled the day. And it wasn't even close.
But that's the way it always is.
But that's changing now, though. I think that's changing now because people are sick of their kids living in their homes and they're sick of these masks and they're sick.
Rob, I ask you, as being a massive orator and you have a lot of followers in the state of Indiana, what's your timeline for when you just say screw it?
Well, I struggle with this because I went to a golf driving range the other day. Ben, have you ever played golf?
Yes, I belong to two very nice golf clubs.
Oh, excellent. You'll have to take me sometime.
Okay, I'll be glad to.
I went to this indoor driving range the other day. And when you go to open the door, there's a sign that says, please put your mask on. We want to keep our business open. And I looked at my girlfriend, she went with me, and I said, this is pathetic. What these people are saying is, we don't want to force you to wear this mask, but the governor of this state has us so afraid, the mayor of the city has us so afraid that if they don't do that, if we don't force you to wear a mask, they're going to shut us down. So I struggle with this because the libertarian in me, the free market person in me says, respect the will of the business owner, but the business owner is being Soviet strongman into compliance. And I don't know how we break that. I don't know how we break that trend.
And you raise a great question that we don't exactly have time to answer. As we are running out of time, I want to tell everybody that's listening, I humbly thank you. Please download the podcast. We're not done yet, Ben. Don't forget to give 5-star reviews. We will be back Saturday night for a Saturday night special. You guys are all welcome. I know Ken can't do it. Ken can't do it. I don't know about Rob, but Rob's always welcome on a Saturday night for a Saturday night special, where we will continue with Prince Jordan's game of who has been met and who has been not met. Ken, tell people where they can find you.
www, of course, MediaActionNetwork.com. Look, we send out a daily newsletter where we point to somebody who's been canceled or screwed over by the press or press out of control, give you a way to fight back. Today, there's one professor at the University of Vermont who's not a wussy. The ones at Georgetown, they say some things and they're crying on the ground, sucking their thumb as they're getting fired. This guy at the University of Vermont is saying, yeah, these anti-racism seminars are racist and I'm not putting up with it. And he's actually standing tall. And those are the guys that we need to help.
You could find Rob Kendall, the Mock and Rob Show, 93.1 WICB. Bam! The future of conservative talk radio. Of course, you can find Ben on Parler at Ben Stein and at spectator.org or somewhere in Beverly Hills, somewhere. And on that note, I want to thank everybody. But Ben, if you would kindly take us out in your favorite way.
From the tables down at Maury's to the place where Louis dwells, to the dear old Temple Bar we love so well, we will serenade our Louis till time and life are gone. Then we'll turn and pass away like the rest. We are poor little lambs who have lost our way. Ba, ba, ba. Gentlemen songsters off on a spree. Ba, ba, ba. Well, anyway, that's the Yale song.
I kept on thinking you were going to say Baba Black Sheep. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for listening. Ken, everybody, thank you guys so much.
Bob, nice meeting you.
That's called the Whiff and Boof song.